Hi, how are you? Hello, Dragonfly Swarm. These artifact sets are beautiful. Okay, so with the 3.3 update, we're getting 2 new artifact sets, and they're both very pretty, but are they worth your resin and your time? There's a lot to talk about regarding how these fancy new sets will spice up the game and how they'll redefine your favorite teams and characters. So naturally, in this video, I'm gonna go over everything you'll need to know about these new sets, what they do, who they work best on, and most importantly, how much better they are than other artifact sets. All for the purposes of helping you decide whether it's actually worth farming for them or not. But before we begin, a word from today's sponsor, Sacred Summons. Sacred Summons is an exciting new MMORPG available on PC and mobile, and it takes place in a land where Qingshou is being threatened by an evil spirit, and it's your job to band together with guardians to gain powerful abilities and fight back against evil. And currently in Sacred Summons, there are 5 different classes to choose from, each with their own unique playstyles and strategies, with characters like the Dragoon and the Gunslinger being my personal favorites. But there's a class for everybody in Sacred Summons, and a lot of them are great for co-op or for solo play, so that's really fun as well. But even beyond that, you can customize your character to your liking, play alone or with friends when fighting against challenging enemies and bosses, and over time you can collect over 100 mounts, costumes, and wings to really make your character feel like yours. The combat is exciting and I'm quite hyped to see where the game goes, so if you want to play it with me, open beta is now live and you can use the link in my description or scan my QR code on the screen to join. Players joining the open beta using my link are gifted 10 additional summon tickets on top of the free 100 summon tickets given to new players, so I wouldn't miss out on the chance to nab some fancy characters and cosmetics. Thank you again, Sacred Summons, for letting me showcase this exciting new game to my viewers, and with that, let's dive right into the meat and potatoes of these new artifacts in Genshin Impact. Alright, so the first artifact set we have is an exciting new set for all of Dendro's Bloom teams, be it Bloom, Burgeon, or Hyperbloom. The 4-piece Flower of Paradise Lost, or FoPL. 4-piece FoPL will grant an 80 EM bonus for the 2-piece passive, and the 4-piece passive will basically just massively increase the wielder's Hyper Bloom, Burgeon, and Bloom damage. You can increase this even further by triggering these Bloom reactions, and according to the artifact description, it won't matter if your character is off the field, they will still enjoy the bonus. So already right off the bat, there's a comparison that needs to be made here, because previously 4-piece Gilded Dreams was the go-to artifact set for characters that wanted to trigger any sort of Bloom reactions. This is because Gilded Dreams can provide the character a whopping 230 EM, which amounts to significantly more Bloom damage than what any other set combination could give you. However, it has a drawback. You cannot guarantee 100% uptime on Gilded Dreams' 4-piece passive, and therefore you'll occasionally be missing out on 150 EM for your character's Bloom damage, which typically won't be a huge DPS loss for Bloom teams, but it is a DPS loss. And even further than that, as good as huge EM stacking can be, having external damage percent bonuses is just better. But until now, damage percent bonuses didn't exist for Bloom reactions, because they're transformative, so most damage bonuses don't work on them. Which is what brings me back to 4-piece FoPL, the new mathematical best in slot for virtually any and all characters that you want to trigger your Bloom reactions with, be it Raiden or Shinobu for Hyper Bloom, Toma for Burgeon, and I would assume these bonuses apply to Nilou's Bountiful Cores as well, but that is something that we don't actually know officially yet, so I say that tentatively. Another thing that we don't officially know yet though is whether the 4-piece passive is multiplicative to your character's Bloom damage or additive, and to explain what that means simply, if the stacking bonus is multiplicative, this set would be granting a total of 80% extra damage to your Bloom reactions, but if it's additive, it would be granting an absurd 140% bonus to your Bloom damage, which would kinda be broken. So my assumption is that it's actually a multiplicative bonus, as in, at max stacks, your character has a total of an 80% increase to their Bloom damage. So that's the assumption we're gonna roll with for this video, because actually, even if it's only a multiplicative bonus, it is still mathematically quite a bit better than 4-piece Gilded Dreams, which I will prove to you right now. I'm slapping some math on the screen to show you a very simplified baseline of Hyper Bloom damage. In this example, I compared Raiden's Hyper Bloom damage when using 4-piece Gilded Dreams versus when she's using the new set, which we can do using the power of math, because Hoyoverse officially revealed to us exactly what the sets do. As you can see, at a very general baseline, you can expect this artifact set to perform roughly 4.5% more powerfully than 4-piece Gilded Dreams can, which, while that isn't game-breaking, it is a noticeable increase in your total damage output. These calculations do take into account enemy resistances and 4-piece Deepwood's Dendro resistance shred, by the way. So is 4.5% a big difference, or rather, is it enough of an improvement to warrant spending your precious resin on a whole new artifact set? Well, to put it into perspective, as we all know, basically every character has a best in slot artifact set and then a second best in slot artifact set. And the average difference between a character's best set versus their second best set doesn't usually tread more than 5%. Therefore, a 4.5% difference in context is actually a pretty normal increase. However, However, you have to keep in mind that you'll occasionally miss bloom damage with 4-piece Gilded Dreams because of the 4-piece passive's activation timing, which would actually bring 4-piece FoPL ahead even more than 4.5%. And on top of that, another thing to keep in mind is, the more EM your character has, the more valuable 4-piece FoPL becomes than 4-piece Gilded Dreams. So actually, my 4.5% increase is just a low average. So with all of that in mind, what is the main takeaway regarding the 4-piece Bloom set? Bloom teams in general, and Hyper Bloom teams especially, are absolutely dominating Genshin right now, and they're very good for helping you clear the abyss without having to think too much or put in crazy amounts of resources and effort. And with that in mind, you can very comfortably just stick with your Gilded Dreams pieces if you want to. They work just fine, and if you think about it, these Bloom teams shot to the top of the meta without the fancy new Bloom set, so it's safe to say they'll stay in the meta either way. However, if you're interested, farming for this new set will technically provide a more practical experience, and on top of the fact that it's already strictly better than Gilded Dreams, if your substats have a lot of elemental mastery, it pulls ahead even further, so it will be a noticeable damage increase. And now, as for the second artifact set coming in 3.3, 4-piece Desert Pavilion Chronicle will unfortunately not be a top artifact option for most Anemo units, because not only is 4-piece VV one of the strongest artifacts in the game, but 4-piece DPC also requires the use of normal and charged attacks, which already makes the majority of our current Anemo character roster not need this artifact set. Currently, the only character who it will very clearly be functional on is Wanderer, because as stated in the 3.3 livestream, he's based on normal attacks, charged attacks, and obviously Anemo damage. So it should be one of, if not his best artifact sets, if we're judging based on what Hoyoverse has told us. And it's also interesting to note that the attack speed bonus will probably not be useless on him because he's a ranged character. Ranged characters typically enjoy attack speed bonuses much more than melee characters do, since they usually have less hit lag. Not to say he won't have bad hit lag, because he could, I guess. I mean, we don't know, but it's very unlikely that he will. And there are other decent contenders for 4-piece DPC as well. For example, you could use it on Heizo for a personal damage build, and it will compete quite closely with 4-piece Echoes and 4-piece Shimenawas as his strongest set for this playstyle. But it isn't his strongest playstyle because he much rather enjoys 4-piece Viridescent to act as a shredder and a damage dealer rather than just a damage dealer. But again, if you do want to build a main DPS almost hyper carry-ish Heizo, this set will probably be one of his best sets, especially considering his other strongest sets in this playstyle are so conditional and or unpredictable. It is interesting to note, however, that 4-piece DPC is actually quite good on Xiao. I say it's interesting because he only realistically makes use of the plunge damage bonus and the Anemo damage bonus, so on the surface you wouldn't think this set would be competitive with his signature set, 4-piece Vermilion, but actually it can be. And granted, I say it can be because it's very situational. It would require your Xiao to be running with expensive weapons that grant lots of stats and attack, and there are other situational factors to consider as well, such as the fact that his elemental skill won't benefit from 4-piece DPC much at all. So overall, DPC is still strictly inferior to 4-piece Vermilion for Xiao. Do not worry, you don't have to farm a new set. But 4-piece DPC doesn't come that far behind Vermilion, so if you happen to get good pieces, it can be competitive with some of his other artifact options. And outside of Xiao, Heizo, and obviously Wanderer, there are other characters that will probably be able to use DPC, but they tread into the realm of very unconventional builds, and therefore, as a guide maker, I suppose, I can't really recommend them in 3.3. And so the overall takeaway with 4-piece DPC is rather simple compared to the other set we talked about. Unless you plan on building Wanderer, you could probably safely ignore this artifact set for now. It's not a bad set, and it's actually pretty interesting considering it promotes selfish playstyles quite well, but it likely won't be amazing on anyone outside of Wanderer, and even then, that's technically speculation, because we still don't know that much official info about Wanderer. But that about sums up the analysis on these sets. The Bloom set is very nice, and in my personal opinion, it is a really healthy addition to the game that further promotes the use of these crazy fun and exciting Dendro teams. And then the Anemo set is... it's okay. It'll probably find the right characters eventually, and I can use it on my C6 Kazuha, so I win. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.